Good morning, everyone. I hope we are all gathered and ready to go. I'm Jennifer Camano. I'm the Planned Giving Director for the Arizona Foundation for Women. I'm coming to you live from my kitchen, and you may see some of my assistants in the background. They are furry and four-legged. Apologies for any interruptions with that. I also want to take a moment and just talk to you about navigating the page that you see. We're all on our toes all the time, learning new platforms and ways to gather in this space. So just some quick things. You have menu items along the bottom, and if they're blue, that means that window is open on your desktop. And if you'd like to make them bigger or smaller, you can drag them by the corners and stretch those windows out. There's also a Q&A, so feel free to ask questions, and I will refer them to Creighton throughout the session. There's other windows in there. You can learn more about Arizona Foundation for Women, take a look at our website. There's handouts from Creighton, and there's the slide presentation. So enough about that. I want to thank you for joining us today for the Arizona Foundation for Women's Financial Independence Seminars. Together with members of our Professional Advisors Committee, we bring you information from experts that you can use to help you make critical financial decisions that may affect you, your business, your family, and ultimately your community. At Arizona Foundation for Women, we work to advance the status of Arizona's women through research, advocacy, and philanthropy to ensure their safety, health, and economic independence. We like to say that we rap to she. This year marks our 25th anniversary. Welcome. Although we have all been affected by an incredibly challenging year, it has made us stronger. And guess what? It's been especially tough on women. So, women always look to what can make us stronger and better. But unfortunately, this organization is here to help in situations like this. So between March and April of this year alone, the unemployment rate in Arizona grew from 4.5% to 5.5%. And we know it went up from there. 57% of all unemployment claims were female, and they represent 48% of the workforce. In the United States, mothers are 47% more likely to lose their job or quit, and 14% are more likely to be furloughed since the start of the crisis. This is primarily to take care of children who are now at home doing online school or still babes in arms. Globally, 70% of healthcare workers and first responders are women, and therefore they're at a higher risk of exposure, and they're bearing the child care responsibilities by and large. In Arizona, Phoenix shelters have reported a 50% drop in shelter capacity due to COVID safety guidelines, and yet at the same time, Phoenix police have reported an uptick in domestic violence, crisis calls, and 140% increase in homicides related to domestic violence. This is a really difficult time, and AFW needs your support more than ever. Our work in research, advocacy, and programming is needed more than ever. If you have clients or friends who are interested in helping Arizona's women, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm available through the website and certainly through this particular video that we're doing today. And it will be recorded for you to share later. I would like to, that was my dog. I would like to turn it over to Creighton Hardy at this time. Creighton is a financial planner with Northwestern Mutual, and he's the co-chair of our AFW PAC committee. So it's a professional advisors committee, and you can learn more about it. If you'd like, let me know. Really excited to have Creighton here to talk about QCDs and end of year giving. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll be back later with some Q&A action. Creighton, you may take it over from here.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jen. Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday to you. We've almost made it to the weekend. I'm really excited to speak with you all today about the causes that matter most, and really how that aligns with your financial freedom and different strategies and ideas that can really benefit you in the long run. And if you're still building wealth, allow you to maybe not have to save as much, or, allow you to give less. And so there's a lot of different ideas and strategies we were going to talk about today. I think working through aligning your distributions with the causes that matter most. So without further ado, I figured, I believe there's a bio in the link there. And so just real briefly, though, I'd like to, introduce not just myself, but my entire team. And if you look here, because quite frankly, I'm not who I am, and we can't serve the clients that we do without our team. It's made up of 5 people, and quite frankly, I just get to be the face. And I think I want to highlight, Catherine, Jason, Ariel, and Greg for all of the work that they do, and especially the work that allows me to be here right now with all of you, because as Jen had alluded to, there's a lot of craziness going on, especially with the election, and I think my point in bringing that up is a lot of things do affect your financial plan, and I think first and foremost, the way that we were planning on just talking through this today was with the mindset of, first and foremost, just talking about where retirement planning and charitable gifting line up. And then, and really where that matters is the tax treatment of different accounts, whether it's, a taxable account, just a standalone investment account that you can touch at any point, or if it's an IRA or, a 401k maybe that you roll into an IRA, different trust strategies and some of the handouts there. And then, kind of tying into that, that's going to be the bulk of today's discussion. So if you would with me, and I'll share it here on the screen, but I think first and foremost, it's important to talk about exactly what our team does in working with clients and in financial planning, and really what that means. So with that said, you're going to pull up, if you can't see it here, you'll pull up the financial planning philosophy or building a house. And so our team really views the financial planning we do with clients a lot like building a home, where we start with the foundation. And for most of you here, once we've identified what your goals are and, the things that are important to you, your vision and your values, first, to make sure a foundation is set is going to be most important. Planning for healthcare, planning for your estate, survivors, the causes you care about, eliminating debt, having adequate emergency funds. And then as you're going through your wealth building journey, once the foundation's set, we've got to start decorating the inside of the house, so to speak. And so those are the short, mid, and long-term goals we work with clients to really understand and define, and make sure that an investment strategy is in alignment with those things. And I think most importantly, and where we like to spend the majority of our time, is actually on the fun part, where you're not saving anymore, you're actually spending down your assets and gifting your assets. And so through that, we find that taxes is one of the biggest burdens that most Americans will pay throughout their life. We want to make sure that you don't run out of money, and that as there's market swings, and certainly there have been this year, and certainly there's more to come, are well taken care of. And I think finally, and really the purpose of our conversation here with AFW is going to be around really making sure that the legacy you want to leave to both your family and the causes you care about, that you can leave here with a few ideas to take back to your trusted advisor, Now, I do want to just say a brief disclaimer here that since, I don't know your personal situation, for all of you who are viewing this, please take all of this information that we're about to walk through as a grain of salt into your specific situation until you consult with your financial advisor, your tax advisor, and your attorney. With that being said, I think if you would with me, pull up the distribution planning buckets PDF if you can't see it here on the screen. And so I just wanted to real briefly walk through in the distribution side for our clients where we pull money from, how those dollars are going to be taxed, and ultimately how we create income. And then we'll dive that much further into, okay, now that we have enough to live on, and we're stress testing that to make sure that we have enough for life, then that next stage of the planning journey or leaving money behind is not only articulated but strategized. And so we'll talk about QCDs, gifting stock opposed to gifting cash or gifting other assets, if you will, some of the tax advantages there, go through a high-level approach on some of the charitable trusts that are available, and just balancing some of these priorities overall. So within, while our clients are saving and building assets, you're going to see about 6 different buckets on this screen here, from deferred annuities. Every dollar that goes in, you're taxed on, but as they grow and compound, you pay no tax, hence the deferral there. And then when you pull the money out, it comes out, part of it is the amount of money you put in, which is just the fancy word for basis. And then the other side of it is your gain. So you're paying partial income tax there until, you've pulled out all of the money that has gone in. You have your taxable accounts, or just your investment accounts, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. You're going to pay taxes, on the income today, and then you'll pay short-term capital gains tax and long-term capital gains tax, which that's going to vary depending on what tax bracket you're in. Again, for your specific situation, just touch base with your tax advisor. And then you have your 401k and your IRA, your traditional retirement accounts that every dollar that goes in, you don't pay tax on. So you get a tax cut today, and then it'll grow and compound with no tax. And when you pull the money out on the back end, you pay income tax. And so we'll talk more about required minimum distributions and really where the QCDs fit in there just a moment. And then, different non-qualified retirement plans, depending on how they're set up. Generally speaking, though, you're going to pay tax on the front end, but maybe not the back end. But kind of hopping ahead here, any dollars on any Roth assets, another fairly popular retirement account, you pay tax on the seed instead of the harvest, if you will. And so every dollar comes out with no tax. And then, you have life insurance that if it's a whole life policy, there's cash value that's inside of the policy that you can access basis first, or the amount of money you put in first. And it grows and compounds with no tax. And any death benefit received is received completely tax-free. Depending on how it's set up would matter if it's considered inside of your estate or outside of your estate. But my point in bringing all of these buckets up, and as you can see here, is these are all, individual siloed strategies. And what, I want the biggest takeaway to be here is that pretty much every account and every strategy on the tax side, they all work better together when we know what is going on and where that is. And so real briefly here, I'd like, if you could, to just open up to the IRA guide piece in your screen there. And if you would just scroll down to the third page, I think it's really relevant to talk about what a required minimum distribution is. It's actually up on the first page. So once you turn 72, there's a life expectancy table that your tax advisor can refer you to, and they will, you have to pull out so much money because you didn't pay tax on the front end, that now you have to start pulling tax out or pulling income out and paying taxes on a portion of those dollars. And so for some of our clients that haven't necessarily diversified in the types of accounts that they've set up for themselves, we start to see what we like to call an RMD tsunami. For instance, there was a client with about $6 million who only needed about $5,000 a month after taxes to live on. And as, because of the RMDs, he has to start pulling out. He's 65 now, but he'll have to start pulling out, depending on growth, all the above. Don't want to bore you with the details, but about 200,000, and then that number increases year over year of how much he's pulling out of his 401k, when the reality is he either wouldn't have to pay tax on it, or he would be able to, leave that there and continue to grow and to compound. And so a really neat strategy that a lot of our clients will use is called the QCD, or the Qualified Charitable Distribution. And so because, there's organizations like AFW and other organizations that I'm sure, each and every one of you have, that are important to you. The idea is that you can take your RMDs, or, up to $100,000 per year, and donate that to a charity of your choosing. And every dollar that you put towards that charity, now it does have to be a public charity, supporting organizations and private foundations are not included in this, but to the public charities, you're able to put $100,000, you don't get taxed on it, and if it's more than what your required minimum distribution is, well, guess what? You get to take less next year. And so I think this is really relevant, especially if you're already giving and you're already making an impact, to make an impact on your family, so there's more to leave money to. So I was, as we were, discussing what the presentation would be with Jen, and I kind of thought to myself, Jen, if somebody gave you a qualified distribution, of course, through the pass-throughs that exist to do that with AFW, what would AFW do if they received $100,000? What kind of impact would that have?
Yeah. Oh, thank you for the question. We would be able to do a lot with it. We have a research report coming out that talks about the status of women in Arizona. The research that research is used to help with state legislation around equal pay, safety for women, and different health care components or measures. So it would help with the research. It would help with what we gift out to women's charities who are doing really the key work of keeping women safe, healthy, and economically empowered. So we fund organizations that provide free legal advice. We fund organizations that are helping women get out of abusive situations. So there's a smattering of charities that we promote and support that are listed on our website. So we would definitely be able to move the needle on helping women. We have a young leadership development program right now called She Leads. And I'm sorry, it's not just for young women, it's for women who are re-entering the workforce, which was one of the things I had to do at some point. And a lot of women face that. And so we have the leadership development program. We have a free She Talks salon series where people can, oh no.
There's the assistants.
I'm going to just leave you with that for now, but we could make $100,000, and we are building our endowment. So we would certainly want to see if that was good with the donor to put some in our endowment so that if we ever run into a situation like we're in now, we'll be able to keep up our research, advocacy, and philanthropy without a hiccup.
Yeah. And
Thanks
if any of you want...
While we're on, can you blow up your slide a little bit? Because I didn't open the PDF, and if others didn't, it'd be nice to see this a little bit bigger. That's all.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. So, Jen, that's really great. I think the point is that they could do a lot. And I think most charities could. And, one of the things I do want to bring up that's really so special about qualified charitable distributions in particular is the fact that a lot of times when you think about whether it be charitable estate planning or just, leaving a legacy in general, the majority of people that we'll talk to who've, done it the old-fashioned way and they've built their wealth through, making sure that they're maxing out their 401k every year, and that's what they want to leave behind to, the next generation. Since 2019, December 31st, the Secure Act was passed that actually changed how inherited IRAs are, treated in the sense of how you have to pull those dollars out. And so if you would with me, just go down to the third page of this PDF on your IRA guide, and you'll see there's a table that kind of talks about how, depending on who your beneficiaries are of your accounts, how those are going to be treated from a required minimum distribution perspective, and they're vastly different. What used to happen in the past, you would inherit an IRA, and when I say in the past, I mean just a year ago, less than a year ago. What would happen is you would inherit the IRA, and then the federal government said, well, now instead of based on the owner of the IRA, the initial IRA, had to pull out, so much money based on their life expectancy. Well, it became the donors or the beneficiaries' life expectancy. And so as you start to look at your financial plan and what you want to leave behind and how you want to leave it behind, I think all things considered, qualified accounts are typically the least efficient, because if we look here now, if it's to a spouse, nothing's really changed there. They can even transfer it into their own IRA. If it's to be left to, someone who's chronically ill or disabled, and what happens a lot of times is these might be, properly set up to special needs trusts to make sure that those, it doesn't affect any benefits. If that's the case, will still be, spit out and taxed under the a single person's life expectancy. Same thing with anyone that maybe isn't your spouse, but they're more than 10 years younger than the person who actually owns the account. Now, with any minors, once they turn the age of majority, which state by state it differs, it's 21 in the state of Arizona, then they actually have to pull the remaining amount out over the next 10 years. And so maybe this wouldn't be a huge issue in the first few years if it was a minor, but let's say, it's just your child who's 30 or 35 and they're earning $100,000 a year, let's say, and there's $1 million that's left in your IRA. Well, that would mean that, over that 10-year period, just to make math very simple, we'll exaggerate things here and just say that it stays at $1 million, not that it would, but you pull out $100,000 every single year, and then now all of a sudden that $100,000 is going to be taxed at the beneficiary's highest tax rate. And so $200,000, depending on if they're single, they're married, they're looking at paying the way that tax brackets are today, roughly $32,000 or 32% on that. So really it's like, gifting $680,000 instead of $1 million. And so I think the QCD offers a really good way to spin down those qualified assets to the causes that you care about and leave, and position those other assets that you have that you do want to end up gifting to charity or to your family, excuse me. And then the next point that I did want to bring up is, with capital gains, and as, we were preparing for this, I thought about a client our firm worked with a few years back, and this gentleman had roughly about $800,000 of Apple stock. And when you look at a capital gain, just as a real simple lesson, how it's calculated, you have the price that you paid for it. That's what they call the cost basis, right? And so whatever the difference is between the cost basis and what the asset has grown to is going to be considered the gain, if you will. And so depending on what your tax bracket is and where you fall there, that's going to depend on how much you would have to pay on that gain. So this it ranges for long-term capital gains, meaning you held the asset for at least a year, between 0% until you earn $40,000. Once you earn $40,000, from there to about $400,000, it's 15% of your gain goes to Uncle Sam. Anything above $400,000 of income would go to 20% would go to Uncle Sam. And then for short-term capital gains, if you've held the asset for less than a year, it would be taxed at your highest marginal rate. So depending on, current situations and what that looks like, the benefit of holding individual equities, quite frankly, is that you can hold them and you don't pay while, you may pay on dividends, but you're not going to pay on the gains while they're appreciating in value. You don't pay any tax. However, with this gentleman who had the $800,000 of Apple stock, he also was giving about $50,000 a year into a charity of his choosing. And because there's a lot of advisors who aren't looking at tax returns and some CPAs that aren't looking at investment statements, a real simple fix was that this guy really liked Apple stock, and it was trading at about $200 a share, and he had bought it for $97 a share, a portion of it. So we, brought this up to a CPA, and it was just a no-brainer to, instead of giving in cash, to give the stock directly to the charity, because he wouldn't have to sell the stock and realize the gain, because the charity would be an exempt organization. So, I think that's just an example that, our team's seen in the real world, where some of the time making sure, because I think anybody who's probably on this call or, supports AFW, they understand the importance of being able to give to those who are less fortunate than them or who need more and more opportunity. And I know a lot of AFW's research and their advocacy really does that. And so with that said, that there's still ways that you can even improve your position, depending, and who knows what taxes are going to be, but currently today, just by giving gifts to kind of choose, if you will, the causes that your tax dollars go to. And I think you can do that when you have a team behind you, or I suppose a lot of time on your hand. So, you know, those are a couple different ideas. Now, if we would just go down here to this charitable giving in the wake of the new tax law, this was written in 2018. But if you will with me, just go down to the final page, or excuse me, you'll go down to the final page, page 6, and it talks about how much income tax you can deduct depending on where the money comes from. And so I think this will serve as a really good resource to be able to share with, you know, with your advisors as far as, you know, what's fair market value, what is just going to be the cost basis. And the overarching idea is that, you know, I think charities exist to serve, and there's a lot of really interesting strategies that you can employ. We didn't go through all of them today. Wanted to keep it more high level, but quite frankly, if we want to go a little bit deeper into anything, feel free to ask questions on the chat now. I just wanted to, you know, make this as interactive as we can through a presentation. But yeah, those are just, you know, highlighting some of the things that we do, how we align our clients, you know, their goals and their values with the financial decisions that they make, and which dollar serves which job description. So Jen, I don't know if we have any questions coming up through the chat there.
Not right at the moment, but I was wondering, doesn't if a donor decides to donate stock, the cost basis becomes what it was the day that the average of the value that day that it was transferred. Is that correct?
So it depends if it's going to be a short-term gain or a long-term gain. So it depends how long they were holding the stock for. So it's cost basis. If it's short-term, it would just be the average amount. If they had bought several shares, right, then you could sell it in that sense. But if you were to gift it, and it would have been a long-term gain, then you're actually able to deduct your gift as the total fair market value.
Right.
And as long as that number isn't, you know, any more than 30% of your adjusted gross income, then you know, you're playing it all square. But of course, consult with your tax advisor before you do anything.
Oh, yes, for sure. And that is definitely the way we advise our donors and try to work with our professional advisors committee. I was wondering, so Arizona Foundation for Women is a supporting organization of Arizona Community Foundation. So if we had someone who was interested in doing something with their QCD, I don't think it can go to a DAF, a donor advised fund, or a supporting organization. You had mentioned that, in private foundation. But could you talk a little bit about how someone could maybe use a designated fund, or however they might be able to still gift AFW, for example, and other organizations that might be supporting orgs?
Sure. So as long as the supporting organizations are, you know, supporting a public charity, and, you know, the organization they're supporting, in AFW's example, that would be the Arizona Community Foundation, that, you know, helps with different grants and other things. They could either use one of their donor advised funds or work with one of their philanthropic consultants to actually gift it to ACF, and then through that, grant the appropriate monies to AFW.
So they can make a designated fund somewhere. And
right, yeah, designated fund that they're gifting on the QCD with a qualified charity, which would be ACF, and then that's being transferred to the donor fund, and then the donor fund gets to choose where those dollars go, and it doesn't have to go to just one organization, which is a nice, bypass through that.
Okay. So I was wondering if you could share what should charities be doing right now at the end of the year? What messages should we be pushing out? 3 things, maybe 2, I don't know.
Well, I think one, especially like AFW, the work that you guys are able to do, and I think especially with so many people, as you kind of already alluded to, Jen, that are really hurting, especially as the holiday season is upon us. I think just continuing to get awareness out about what the charity's doing is super important, of course. Now, this year specifically, it's been a very interesting year, but I think at the end of the year, as clients and especially retired clients are looking at what they're going to be paying in taxes for this year, depending on what they want to gift. There's if it's a larger sum, donor advised funds can be a really strategic way to gift a larger amount all at once, to a charity and get a deduction for this year if it's been a high gains year, and then allow the that fund to continue to take your standard deduction for subsequent years. Along with, we already talked about the qualified charitable distribution that you can take after age 72. So that's another thing. But I think the broader message here is just to, make sure that as the year approaches, everyone who's supporting AFW or supporting any other organization is being sure to take a close look at, their donors or maybe their potential new donors. Take a close look at their situation and see where they can give and how it benefits them as well. That would be the main 3 points. I kind of meshed the last 2 together, so yeah, hopefully that works. You said you want 2 or 3, so I don't know which one I gave you.
That's great. No, I appreciate it. I do have a couple questions from Susan.
Sure.
Please explain again how taxes on appreciated assets can be avoided by putting it into a charitable trust and the immediate tax consequences for the donor.
Okay, so if I'm hearing the question correctly, because it sounds that appreciated assets can be avoided putting it into a charitable trust. So it can be either avoided into a charitable trust by, or not even a charitable trust, but just by a donation, by actually donating the assets at fair market value. So that way you're not selling them at basis, as long as you've held them for longer than 12 months. And it's under 30% of your assets. So you're not selling the stock to gift it, but instead you're gifting the stock at fair market value, which allows you to deduct the fair market value as your donation overall. And you don't sell, and realize the gain, if you will, because the charity would realize the gain because now the ownership has been passed. And so the second part of the question, there's different charitable trusts that exist. And, whether it be a unit trust, a charitable remainder unit trust, or CRUTs they're called, or, another example would be a charitable remainder annuity trust. The idea there is that you you gift a large sum to the trust. The trust, there's a predetermined amount of income for either a certain number of years or for life that the trust is required to pay out. Whether, if it was $1 million, again, to make math simple, and it was 5%, then, 5% every year of that $1 million is being sent to the person who's inheriting, sent to the donor. And then they're all prearranged, but the idea is that, you get a larger deduction in that first year and then other years as well, depending on, the valuations, not to go too into the weeds. And typically when we work on CRUTs or CRATs, if you will, with clients, we're working really closely with their estate planning attorney and also their accountant that are handling some of those other nuanced details. We're just directing where the dollars go, once they're inside of the trust, making sure that, everything's being titled correctly, invested appropriately to provide the lifetime income. And, or another situation we've had in the past is a donation to a CRUT with also setting up an irrevocable life insurance trust if, with estate taxes, if those are being an issue. And quite frankly, depending on with them right now, a couple, anything is excluded from the 40% estate tax until 2026. But then after that, it's planned to sunset, and depending on how the election goes, not that this is any political commentary by any means, but I think there's two very different outcomes with how things are going to be taxed. So that's more or less the gist, is that if the estate tax does drop, back to the 5 million per person or 11 million total, then a lot of these discussions, there's even more exposure. So one thing that you can do is make gifts to these different trusts, also have, an irrevocable life insurance trust if that's set up appropriately, because it's outside of the estate. It can actually pass on, a certain amount of legacy to family or to charities. And so those, a lot of times, will work in tandem with one another in those different estate planning, avoiding estate tax scenarios. The upfront cost across the board would just be administrative fees to set up the trust, of course, and then and those vary. And, if on the charitable giving sheet, there's actually, it talks through each of those trusts and the pros and cons that, the tax law change in 2018 gave to each strategy. And so it's, it allows you, there's pros and cons to everything. So I think, just know 30% of your income, if you wanted to give that, you can do that with a stock that's a long-term capital gain that you've held on to for for more than a year. And then anything outside of that, there's, different mid to long-term strategies there. So recapture the money placed in a charitable trust. Okay. Was this from Susan as well about the life insurance trust?
Yes. So I wasn't sure if you could see that. Yeah. So I think you answered the question about the immediate tax consequences for the donor. But the next question is, explain how a donor can recapture the money placed in a charitable trust by using life insurance.
Sure. So, of course, all depends on the situation, but with the deduction, depending on the level of, what you put inside of the charitable remainder unit trust, the level of what you put inside of that creates a deduction. So sometimes this is an opportunity for some of our clients who have large pieces of land or business, things that are fairly illiquid, to create an immediate distribution, if you will. And then the life insurance serves as a tax-free death benefit for whenever they die. And so when you look at the charitable deduction or the tax deduction, as it's relevant, drives down the amount of money that you pay in taxes. If that's less than the premiums on the life insurance, that's kind of how the money is recaptured. Of course, it just depends on what the tax situation is, but that's how they can do it. And, life insurance kind of gets a little fickle as well because it does depend on health. So it also depends on when you have the policy and all of the above. And so those would be the answer to that question. So I don't know if there's any more pressing questions, or Jen, if you had thought of any, or
Well, I had definitely asked you to touch on the QCD for supporting orgs and what we should be talking to our donors about right now.
Sure.
I can't think of anything else off the top of my head.
Well, fair enough.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, all I was going to, add, I guess, at the end here is just thanking each and every one of you for, getting on with us today and supporting AFW and, having an open mind and a willingness to learn some different ideas. And, if you would like to get in touch with me and have any more nuanced questions about your specific situation and our team, you're more than welcome to reach out. All of my contact information, I believe it's included in the registration, but my website is Creighton, bhardy.nm.com, and all of my contact information is there, so you can feel free to reach out with any questions you do have.
We can add that to the email that goes out thanking people for attending too.
Great. Thanks so much.
Well, Creighton, it's always a pleasure to work with you, and we appreciate all your support of Arizona Foundation for Women. If anyone on the call wants to learn more about how we steward and take care of donors to our organization, I'm happy to share that information with you, knowing that people who give to either the endowment or make a planned gift will have wonderful stewardship and much love and affection from us. So thank you all for attending. Yeah, I think that's it. It's a wrap.
Great. Well, thank you for all the support that you do for Arizona women, Jen, and on behalf of your whole organization. So great being with you all, and have a great day.
Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.